And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. On this episode, I'm going to be sharing what Peter Rutzler tweeted about in regards to the presser for Marco Silva this morning ahead of the match against Brighton and Hove Albion. There's some interesting nuggets in there that I'm going to be sharing on this show. You can call this a little bit of a preview show, but I will have a preview show on Friday of Fulham's match against Brighton and Hove Albion at the Amex on Saturday. But here's the presser from Marco. And again, this is courtesy of Peter Rutzler from The Athletic on Twitter. So I'm going to be sharing some information that Peter tweeted out in regards to what Marco Silva said. So before I go on any further, this will be about a 10 to 15 minute show. I also am going to share my thoughts on Willian at the end of this quick episode. But before I do anything else, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It does help other Fulham supporters find us, especially right now. If you could, I would love it if you could actually add a review on Apple Podcast and give us a rating. That would be fantastic. We have not had many reviews in several years, so it would be great to get a review. I would really appreciate that if you listen on Apple Podcast. Okay, so let's get going. And again, like I mentioned, everything I'm sharing comes from tweets from Peter Rutzler from The Athletic, from Marco Silva's presser. These are the words of Marco Silva. So I just want to share that. So let's start with some team news. And this is what Marco had to share. Again, from the Twitter account of Peter Rutzler. Silva on team news, quote, "Probably yes, that's all the squad will be available. Said there's a few to assess. Mitro and Willian had knocks. Robinson was a little unwell at the start of the week." Okay. So that comes from Marco's presser. This is what Peter Rutzler was able to get from Marco's presser in regards to team news. So let's look at these individually. And I'm going to ask the question, if you're happening to watch live, I have a few people. So out of the three that was just mentioned, which Fulham player would be the biggest loss if they cannot play on Saturday? Would it be Mitro? Would it be Willian? Or would it be Anthony Robinson? Very interesting. So Marco is hopeful that all three will be ready to go, but they still need to be assessed. So when I look at these individually, and that's how I'm going to go through this, when I look at Mitro, I actually don't think he's the biggest loss. I'm not a fan of what Vinicius is giving Fulham right now. I don't think he's given them enough. I wanted to give him a chance, but I don't think he is, at this point, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am going to admit I was wrong. I don't think he's a suitable replacement for Mitro. Just can't offer what he can offer in all facets of this game. Can he potentially score? Yes, but I think you need more than that. I think you need hold-up play. I think you need defensive abilities as well, and he's just not Mitro. So this is a loss, but I don't think it would be the biggest loss. Willian would be a significant loss because he's played so well and he's offered so much to Fulham Football Club. But if he was not able to go, I think Fulham are in good position with a replacement there with Manor Solomon. So I don't think this would be the worst loss here. I think Fulham could get by with Manor Solomon, and I think at some point Manor Solomon should get a chance to start, whether it's on the right instead of Bobby Decordova-Reid, or in this case, if Willian can't play, then I think you have a very suitable replacement in Manor Solomon. So the loss of Willian would be significant, but I think that you have someone that could step in and do a job. In the case going back to Mitro, I don't think that it is a great replacement, but I think he can do a decent job. Just not good enough, but I think he can do a decent job. I think they can get by with Vinicius, but that's still not good enough. The issue would be if Anthony Robinson can't play. Now, let's hope he's okay. It says, according to the presser, that he's feeling a little bit unwell. So if that's the case and he cannot play, this is a significant loss. This would be the biggest loss because right now, especially going against a team like this, I do not want to see Layvin Kurzawa starting for Fulham against Brighton Hove Albion. I just don't want to see it. I might consider, if this was the case, playing Tim Ream at left back and playing a duo of Tosin and Diop. I don't think he would go with that. I think he'd play Kurzawa, but Kurzawa scares me. Kurzawa scares me at this point. This, I think, is a miss for the recruitment team. I was hoping he would come good. I would not play Layvin Kurzawa if Anthony Robinson can't go. But I'm sure Marco will play Kurzawa. He knows better than me, but that's just my opinion on that. If this was to play out of these three players, say, and for me, the worst case scenario would be Anthony Robinson not being able to play. And that just shows his value to Fulham Football Club. It also talks a little bit about Kurzawa, because Kurzawa, I think, has been just not good enough. Let's see. Here's from Neil Stewart. He says, great question, but I say Willian. I see why you're saying that. Steve Reynolds, he agrees with me. Jedi, as we need attacking backs. Steve, I'm glad you agree with me. We actually agree sometime. We do agree. And then, of course, Neil changes his mind. You changed my mind. Agree on Jedi being the biggest potential loss because of the drop-off to Kurzawa. That's kind of how I'm looking at this, Neil. If you look at Mitro, if you have to play Vinicius, you have to play Vinicius. It is a drop-off, but I think this one with Kurzawa to Robinson is a much bigger drop-off. So that's why I'm going with Robinson being the potential biggest loss. But let's hope all three players are available. I'm just playing the game here. And let's see what ends up happening on Saturday. This is, again, coming from the words of Marco Silva, that there are three players to watch for this upcoming match heading into it against Brighton Hove Albion. Also want to mention that Peter also tweeted this, and we already knew this, except Tom Kearney, ankle injury, and Neeskens Cabano long-term. Cabano's out long-term, so that wasn't even a factor. Didn't mention Tom Kearney, but I'm glad that Peter now mentioned. I have a feeling that Marco mentioned it as well. Tom Kearney, I've heard different things. I'm sure he's going to be out for at least a few weeks. Who knows? It could be longer. We'll have to see how this plays out. I think Fulham have cover, but not for what Kearney offers. Kearney offers calmness in the middle of the pitch if you need to change things up. We'll see what Sasa Lukic can offer you. They're different types of players, but I think the loss of Tom Kearney, hopefully it won't be that big and hopefully it won't be that long, but it's something to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on when you have a situation when you need to change the game. You can't have Tom Kearney come in to calm the game. You would probably have to bring in Sasa Lukic, and he just offers something different. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about what Marco Silva had to share about Willian. Again, this comes from the Twitter account of Peter Rutzler from the presser. Quote, he's a really humble guy, always open to lose or improve. He doesn't like to miss a session, even if we try to manage him. He's a top player, unquote. So that just speaks volumes on Willian. It really does. Willian is a player that I think has given you so much. We did not expect a lot, but he's a true professional. And I think he is actually making other Fulham players better to play with him. Players like Manor Solomon, Bobby Decker-Dovereed, Harry Wilson, Dan James, they can all learn from Willian. And I mentioned that in a prior episode. I think his involvement in Fulham Football Club goes farther than just playing on the pitch. I think he's a true leader, a professional, and I think others are learning from him, which I think is great. So great stuff from Marco Silva on Willian. I'll have final word on Willian at the end of this show. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about what Marco Silva had to share about Brighton, Hove Albion, and their manager. So again, from Peter Rutzler's Twitter account, from the presser, this is what Peter tweeted Silva on De Zerbi, quote, his idea is clear. He's doing a very good job. Brighton have been improving season after season. When he came in, they were in good position, but he's a very good manager, unquote. That's what's interesting about this, is that there's not been any drop-off from Brighton and Hove Albion. First time Fulham played them, I thought they were very good. Fulham played very well against them, but I was very impressed with Brighton and Hove Albion. And De Zerbi has basically just kept it going with Brighton Hove Albion. And some might say, and we'll talk about this on the preview show, are they better with De Zerbi than Graham Potter? It's interesting, but they are playing very well. And as I also mentioned in my last episode, a website that predicts the Premier League, predicts them to end fifth. That speaks volumes of what's going on with Brighton Hove Albion. If you also want to hear some commentary, I would go to the Fulhamish podcast. They talked about Brighton Hove Albion and their model and how well it's working. Definitely check out the Fulhamish podcast. They had a very good discussion on Brighton Hove Albion's business model. It's very interesting, so I would highly recommend that. Okay, here's another quote from Marco, again from Peter Rutzler's Twitter account from the presser. Quote, in almost 100% of the games, they have more possession. They can frustrate teams. We have to be aware as we're a team that like to have the ball, unquote. Okay, so what's interesting about this, I agree with everything that Marco said in his presser about Brighton Hove Albion. They're going to have the majority of the ball. That's fine, because I like Fulham on the counter. I've always liked Fulham on the counter this season. It's going to sound strange to say, but I think this plays into a strength of Fulham Football Club. Brighton Hove Albion are a very good side, so this is going to be a difficult match. But in this case of them having more position, I'm fine with it, because I think Fulham can deal with it the way they're set up, the way Marco Silva has set up the team. Obviously, Marco wants his team to have more of the ball to play with it. I totally agree with that. But Marco has done such a wonderful job, his coaching staff and the players, learning how to play without the ball. They've been excellent. So I understand that this is an advantage for Brighton and Hove Albion, but it also plays into a strength of Fulham Football Club. Very interesting situation on Saturday. I look forward to seeing how this all plays out. Okay, coming up next to end this episode, I'm going to share my thoughts on a report coming out of Brazil in regards to Willian. Okay, to end this quick episode of Cottage Talk with some team news from Marco Silva's presser, courtesy of tweets from Peter Rutzler, I wanted to share something that I saw yesterday, and you could see it today on Twitter. There are reports coming out of Brazil that Willian might go back to Brazil to play in Brazil after his time at Fulham is done. And could that be possible? Listen, anything's possible. But again, his family dealt with a very bad situation down there. It ended badly for him in Brazil. So I don't know. I would actually be surprised, but anything is possible. So Willian could head back to Brazil. He could go to another team in the Premier League. He could go anywhere else in the world to play. He has made a marker this season that he still has a lot to offer. So here comes the situation. Do you think Willian will not return after this season ends? I think the easy answer is I don't know. I want him to return. I want him to come back for another year. But I do think that he will have options. And I think Fulham need to do their best to try to entice Willian to stay. Listen, we know he wants to be in London. So he's got a good situation here. If I'm Fulham Football Club, if I'm Tony Khan, Shahid Khan, the coaching staff emphasize to him what he has brought to Fulham Football Club and what he means to being with us, and hopefully he'll want to stay and sign a new deal. And I hope that ends up happening. I just don't know how this is all going to play out. All the cards are with Willian on this. But the only thing I will say is that I think it's obvious he's taken to the club. So I think that there is an opportunity here. I just don't know how this is going to turn out when potentially bigger clubs might be coming in for him, because they didn't know what he had left in the tank. After what happened at Arsenal, probably there weren't going to be that many opportunities. Well, Fulham gave him a lifeline back to the Premier League. So I hope that he does stay. But this is something that we're going to have to watch. When I saw the report, I don't think he's going to go back to Brazil, but who knows? Like I said, anything is possible. I do have a couple of comments. Let's see. This is from my friend here. He goes, I'm with Fulham, not Chelsea the rest of the season. Chelsea is embarrassing. Okay, well, I'm not going to disagree with you there. This is from Steve Reynolds. Depends on loyalty. We brought him back, and I hope he gives us another season. Interesting take there, Steve. Loyalty is one thing. Money's another. Offer him enough money, maybe he will stay. We shall see. It's interesting. It's something to watch in the upcoming months if Willian is going to stay another season or maybe longer than that with Fulham Football Club. So just something to watch. I found this report interesting, and I do hope Willian signs a new deal with Fulham. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. As always, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that does subscribe and obviously listens. It means a great deal to me. I love doing this show. It's keeping my mind off of other things right now. Let's just leave it at that. But I am just very happy to do this show. I'm loving every minute of it. And I love the fact that you keep watching and listening. So thank you. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this episode. My name is Russ Goldman. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, now part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.